Hi friends! Last Sunday we talked about what Jesus meant when he said, "Sin no more." He says it twice, both times in the Gospel of John. First, in chapter 5, after he healed the man at the pool of Bethsaida, and second, in chapter 8, after he forgave the woman who was caught in the sin of adultery. If you're interested in hearing the entire message, you can find it on our website. It's under the Messages tab in Past Church Services. The main point is that sin no more is an invitation into a new way of life with Jesus. A life that overflows with healing and forgiveness and freedom and grace. It doesn't mean that anything goes, and it doesn't mean that we never mess up. Instead, it means that our life is on a new path, a path that is free from carrying the burden of guilt and shame and regrets, and a path that is free to give thanks and to promote peace and express love. Both times Jesus says, "Sin no more," it's in reference to interpreting the Mosaic law by its spirit rather than by its letter. There are a couple of other places in the New Testament in which followers of Jesus are admonished to sin no more. And in both of these cases, it's in reference to resurrection and eternal life. And again, it's an invitation into a new way of life, one that no longer follows the path that leads to death, but one that walks in the way that leads to life. The first instance is in Paul's first letter to the Corinthians in chapter 15. In this chapter, Paul argues the reality and the centrality of the resurrection, both of Jesus and of Jesus' followers. In verse 34, he writes, "Sober up as you rightly ought to, and sin no more." His point in the entire passage is that our future resurrection, which follows from Jesus' already accomplished resurrection, gives meaning to our present life. All of our suffering and brokenness and struggles and hardships will be redeemed when our life, which is filled with all those things now, survives death's sting and then is rid of all of those things forever. The second instance is in 1 John chapter 3. I'm reading verses 2 through 3 and 9. "Beloved, we are God's children now. What we will be has not yet been revealed. What we do know is this: when he is revealed, we will be like him, for we will see him as he is. And all who have this hope in him purify themselves just as he is pure. Those who have been born of God do not sin, because God's seed abides in them. They cannot sin because they have been born of God." The point that John is trying to make is that if we have the promise of eternal life and the hope of heaven ahead of us, then we should make every effort here and now to be pure just as Jesus is pure. It's kind of like if you're going to meet a future employer. You want to learn as much about the business as you can so that you can make the right impression. The way that we make ourselves pure is to step off the path of sin and selfishness and step onto the path of grace and love. The more we know about the business of Jesus and follow its practices, the better prepared and suited we will be for his retirement plan. To sin no more does not mean that we never make mistakes. Rather, it means that we're on the right path, so that even when we misstep, we fall on the grace that leads us back to Jesus. Thanks for listening. I'll see you again next week.